This attitude problem. You people need to learn some manners.
Mayday! Mayday! This is Lara Croft of the Endurance. We are stranded on an island with a dragon's triangle.
Well, you have my total attention now. If that was just your way of trying to
I only play for sport. You don't know how far I've come.
Lara Croft has become a staple, not only in the world of gaming, but in pop culture as a whole. What was once a computer character made up of 250 polygons, Lara Croft is now a well-known figure across all platforms of entertainment well beyond the console. In this video, we'll be taking a look back on the 25 years of Lara Croft, from Lara's debut to her present-day impact as a pop culture icon. It's hard to believe that 2021 marks the 25th anniversary of Tomb Raider and 25 years since the world met Lara Croft for the first time. Over the years, we've seen Lara raid countless tombs, go through a few makeovers, achieve world records, and even make it to Hollywood. A lot has happened for Lara over the years, but as a famous explorer once said,
"Sometimes to understand your present, you have to go back to your past."
As the gaming industry rapidly evolved in the 1990s, we entered the era of 3D gaming. Tomb Raider was one of the very first games to showcase this new kind of gaming, and it did not disappoint. Toby Gard, a designer from Core Design, came up with the idea to have an action exploration and puzzle solving game set in the pyramids of Egypt. The core team originally envisioned a male protagonist who featured a hat and a whip, but were concerned that the character might feel too similar to another well-known archaeologist. After much more brainstorming, enter Lara Croft, a South American archaeologist and ruthless mercenary. Core Design knew they wanted a female Indiana Jones-esque protagonist, which differed from the predominantly male protagonists found in video games at that time. Lara Croft seemed promising to Core Design, but they still weren't completely set on this character.
The character that we originally had was called Lara Croft. So we thought, well, why don't we make the character British? And why don't we just make her not only British, but make her really British, give her a great education. She's from a very, well-to-do family. She's had, a very privileged upbringing.
So it was back to the drawing board for the developers, and with a phone book of names on hand, Core Design changed Lara Croft to Lara Croft, and Lara Croft quickly became the Tomb Raider we know today, Lady Lara Croft, a British archaeologist who traded the aristocratic lifestyle to get her hands dirty exploring ancient tombs and uncovering some of the world's greatest secrets, leading to her acquiring the title of Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider was an action-adventure game that was based around puzzle solving, as Lara Croft worked to uncover the secrets of an ancient Atlantean artifact known as the Scion. Visiting locations like Peru, Greece, and notably Egypt, the game was one of the first games that featured a 3D third-person perspective. It followed a grid-based design which we would see in several games to follow, and had Lara exploring tombs in an acrobatic manner, with players needing to perform carefully timed jumps, shimmy across ledges, and navigate deadly traps in order to traverse through each tomb. From its release, Tomb Raider topped the charts, and it would go on to sell over a whopping 7 million units, which was well over the 100,000 units Core Design were expecting.
I remember going down to the game shop in the high street, standing in a queue and having people both ahead of me and behind me holding copies of the game and talking about how excited they were.
The game was a major success and won many awards such as Game of the Year and Best Action Computer Game. Tomb Raider was one of the first 3D games ever made and paved the way for many more games to follow. Players adored Lara. The idea of a female protagonist in an action-adventure title was unheard of, especially in the world of gaming. But even with the game's huge success, Core Design never could have predicted how they were just laying the foundations for something spectacular to come. Since her 1996 debut, Lara has come a long way. We watch Lara continue to grow and take the world by storm, from exploring the mountain peaks of Tibet to surviving the cursed islands of Yamatai. The franchise continued and Lara Croft appeared in 11 more main series games, which were divided across 3 different alternative timelines: a classic timeline, a legend timeline, and the survivor timeline, with the series also featuring 14 spin-off and mobile games, one of which is yet to be released. In the classic timeline, Lara Croft swapped her upper-class life for one that was filled with thrills and adventure. Lara ventured many different locations through many different escapades, one of which almost ended her life and had resulted in her being presumed dead. Although Lara's adventures were great, it wasn't always smooth sailing for this Tomb Raider. Following the success of the first installment, core design did not slow down when it came to producing more adventures for Lara, and the success of the series didn't slow either. Regardless, core design and fans alike felt that around the release of the 4th or 5th installments, they had exhausted all they could do with Lara and the series was becoming stale. They needed change, and with the upcoming release of the PlayStation 2, this gave them the perfect opportunity to do so, and they began working on the 6th installment, Tomb Raider, the Angel of Darkness. From the get-go, Core and Eidos had massive ambitions for the Angel of Darkness. It was decided that Lara would follow a darker path that hadn't been seen before in the franchise in order to make it more mature and give it the restyling that it needed. Due to timing constraints and overly ambitious goals, Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was released before it was ready, and even though it was praised for having a great story, it resulted in an extremely glitchy game and nosedived Tomb Raider's ratings. What was thought to be the start of a new trilogy, Angel of Darkness ended up being the last game Core Design would work on before handing the dual pistols over to Crystal Dynamics, where we would see the Legend timeline begin for Lara several years later. The Legend trilogy was far more narrative driven than any previous installments and featured Lara Croft seeking answers about what happened to her mother when she was a child, while also revisiting Lara's first adventure in celebration of the 10th anniversary. Players were given a completely revamped control system and a refresh on Lara's character. It featured a lot more combat techniques than what we had seen previously and successfully brought the series back to life. Shortly after the Legend trilogy ended, Tomb Raider's publishers, Eidos Interactive, were taken over by Square Enix, and 5 years later, Tomb Raider was given a complete reboot, moving into the Survivor timeline. This Lara Croft was a lot more realistic, younger, and a lot less experienced. The Survivor trilogy sees the series become more mature and is an origin story for Lara Croft, featuring a younger Lara as she tries to stop the cult that killed her father, known as Trinity, while slowly becoming the Tomb Raider we've known all these years. Gone are the grid-based tombs and acrobatics of all previous games, as we now have a Lara Croft who will hunt and scavenge her way to the next goal. Because of the realism, players were able to relate to Lara more than ever before. Going back to 1997, Lara managed to step out of the console for the first time and into comic pages of Top Cow, an American comics publisher. Lara joined Top Cow in a crossover event with their popular comic book series Witchblade, and due to its success, managed to gain a 50-issue comic series that lasted for 5 years. With the series' reinvention after the 2013 reboot, Dark Horse Comics went on to release 38 issues of their own Tomb Raider comics, focusing on the more realistic version of Lara Croft. Her adventures beyond the console didn't stop there. Core Design signed a deal with Paramount Pictures to create a film adaptation and quickly began development, with the film being titled Lara Croft Tomb Raider. The film, starring Angelina Jolie as Lara Croft, began production in 2000 and was released the following year. It became one of the most successful game-to-film adaptations to date, gaining a lifetime gross of $274 million worldwide. A sequel to the film, titled Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, was released 2 years later. The films were a great success and were loved by many within the gaming community and beyond. In 2007, following Crystal Dynamics' revival of the series, a 10-part animated series titled Revisioned was released on GameTap TV, which featured 10 separate stories by different writers, each with its own distinct animation style. The series was adored by fans and is still popular in fandom today. Following the release of the Survivor trilogy, Lara returned to the silver screen. The film, simply titled Tomb Raider, starred Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft and was loosely based on the events of the 2013 game. Parallel to the 2001 film, it gained a gross of $274 million and scored a sequel which is now in its pre-production stages. It was also revealed this year that Lara will return to animation, with Netflix announcing a Tomb Raider anime taking place after the events of the Survivor trilogy. For the last 25 years, Lara Croft has touched many audiences from many different media platforms, comics, television, film, and of course, gaming, all of which have brought a wonderful community of fans together. Lara has obtained many Guinness World Records, such as most recognizable female character in a video game, most successful video game heroine, and most detailed video game character, to name a few. She has been in countless TV advertisements for some of the most well-known brands, and Lara even managed to have a road name after her in Derby, which was home to the original Tomb Raider team at Core Design. Lara Croft has come such a long way from her Egyptian tomb raids of 1996, becoming a multimedia icon and impacting the lives of so many. With a character so big across so many different platforms, it's hard to deny that Lara Croft has touched a lot of people's lives. Upon its release, Tomb Raider fueled the flames of the ever-growing girl power movement of that time. Lara was a strong, powerful woman that didn't need to rely on anyone but herself, and it was the first time women really felt like they could identify and relate to a video game protagonist, therefore brought more female gamers to the market. According to Ian Livingstone, the former Eidos Life president, early data showed that almost 40% of Tomb Raider players were female. But above all, Lara's greatest impact has always been and continues to be on her fans. We asked Tomb Raider fans if Lara has had any sort of impact on their lives and received over 60 amazing responses, all with the short answer being yes. One user wrote, "Unfortunately, I am disabled, increasingly so due to degeneration. I have played Lara from game 1 and playing has allowed me to forget the pain and lack of mobility. For a short while, I am back to a healthy, mobile, pain-free me. Thanks, Lara." Another user responded, "I remember one time we were playing and talking about Lara Croft, and my aunt jokingly said, you know, in a world that tells you to be like a princess, Lara actually tells you to be whatever you want." My aunt was joking, but those words stuck with me, that Lara was actually the first woman to tell you to be different. To me, it meant the world. One other user stated, "Playing Lara as a little boy empowered me and made me realise that heroes come in different shapes and forms. I didn't need to live up to the masculine stereotype expected of me." Another fan wrote, "Lara Croft showed me that you don't have to be the way that people expect you to be. Be yourself and people will love you." Lara Croft is a British noble and decided not to behave like one. Instead, she is herself and we love her that way. Early on in the franchise, however, Lara's female icon and role model status were largely debated among Tomb Raider fans, with Lara's exaggerated body type putting her in a position where she had been recognised as a sex symbol. Eidos were initially protective of Lara, but advertisement campaigns for the next few games began to embrace it. Because of this, it sparked a debate on whether Lara Croft was a powerful icon or just another fantasy figure. In fact, this sexualization of Lara Croft was what led to her creator, Toby Gard, to leave the company after the first game.
Don't you think you've seen enough?
Some people, however, saw no reason as to why Lara couldn't be both. As a sexy female icon with her attractive side stemming from her strength and confidence, rather than just what her body looked like, and it was empowering to see for many women at the time. And although sexualization of Lara Croft has minimized in recent years, fans would still debate whether this added to Lara's character or done the opposite. One fan responded to our previous question stating, "I think Lara has been a very underrated, underappreciated role model for a lot of women and men from the 90s and onwards. I have few grievances of how Crystal Dynamics described her as a sex symbol. I felt that this focus people put on her sex appeal always distracted from her many inspiring attributes, and really should be recognised by how she inspired so many people. However, another user wrote, "People often comment on her looks as a reason why the character is anti-feminist. Why does looking the way she does make her anti-feminist? Having these attributes takes nothing away from how strong, determined and inspiring she is. And any attribute can be strong and feminist, as being feminist is having the freedom to do whatever the hell you want to do, and Lara Croft certainly does that." It would be rude to discuss Lara's iconic status without getting her own input on the matter. We reached out to Janelle Elliott, one of the original voice actresses who portrayed Lara Croft in Tomb Raider 4, 5 and 6, and asked if she felt that Lara had impacted the gaming and pop culture scene since her 1996 debut. Janelle responded, "Yes, I think Lara and Tomb Raider firmly made their mark in the mid-90s. Firstly, she was probably the first female gaming character to step into the limelight who was strong, feisty and didn't play the damsel in distress. She was a match for any male competition. I think boys admired her and girls identified with her. She had a tough attitude and a strong backbone while she retained her femininity. She would fight for what is just and fair." Lara Croft and Tomb Raider have had one hell of a ride for the past 25 years, with both highs and lows. With the upcoming film and Netflix series, along with talks from developers about unifying the Tomb Raider game timelines, it's clear that Lara Croft isn't about to slow down anytime soon. Here's to another 25 years of a pop culture icon.